Glavin! Welcome to this movieboozer.com virtual pubcast. I'm your host, Ken Ekman.
Welcome to NPR's All Things Considered.
Welcome to NPR All Things Considered. I'm your host, Ken Ekman, and I'm joined today by Bill Arsenault and Hawk Ripjaw.
Hey.
And,
I guess in an All Things Considered voice, I should be like, thank you for having me.
Yes, this is the sound of my voice. So, we have some movies to discuss this week.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hawk's microphone is off right now. So
yeah, Hawk seems to have forgotten the fact that he's in a recording at this time.
I think he had like a roommate.
We were doing NPR voice. All right, so we're going to just jump right into it. A movie we tried to discuss last week, but it just got too late, so we didn't
Well, it wasn't that it got too late. It was that the conversation took a weird turn at the very end, and you didn't want to follow that up with The Breadwinner.
Yeah, we got off on quite a bit of tangents last week. So The Breadwinner is a movie that is it's the latest release by Cartoon Saloon, an Irish film studio that has put out 3 animated features, and it has a few TV series that it does. And The Breadwinner got a release through Netflix, which thankfully it was prior to the Oscars. What pissed me off about their last film, Song of the Sea, is it didn't get released on VOD until after the Oscars, and I had to completely reverse my pick of who I wanted to win. It's I'm gonna just say it again. Cartoon Saloon is a hell of an animation studio. All 3 of the movies they've made so far are artful. They're creative, gorgeously rendered, beautiful performances, and all of them have a really interesting concept behind them. Now, am I the only one who's seen this, or have either of you?
I haven't.
The Breadwinner?
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
All right. So, first of all, I'm going to turn this over to you then, Hawk. What did you think of The Breadwinner?
I thought it was very beautifully animated. That was the biggest thing.
Okay.
I think that I thought it was very strange. I was expecting a foreign language film. I thought it was very interesting that everyone spoke English.
For a movie made by an Irish film studio.
Exactly, about Afghanistan.
Yeah, about Afghanistan, right. You were expecting it to be a foreign language film, and it's
which is, I mean, either way, it doesn't really affect the quality of the film. I thought that was just kind of interesting.
No, that's fine. I get it. It seems like one of those movies like Persepolis that could have been a foreign language film.
Yeah. But I thought that, I mean, I don't really like the whole, a girl pretends to be a guy to do stuff, but I think that the way that that storyline was very culturally driven, I thought was a really good way to tackle that.
Not only is it culturally driven, but there's actual instances of it happening during the Taliban-led Afghanistan because of the same reasons that happen in here, which is it was a reality of living under the Taliban that if you were a female, you could not go out in public without a male member of your family escorting you. And say something happened and you just don't happen to have any male members of your family nearby,
right?
You couldn't go out in public,
right?
And so even in other Muslim countries that are more fundamentalist in nature, there have been recorded instances of women just masquerading as men simply to make getting around easier without being, a point of fundamentalist contention, so to speak.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. Yes, I understand from you could say that this movie is the artsy version of Milan if you're really trying to minimize things.
I actually, my first thought was the artsy version of She's the Man.
She's the God damn it.
The Amanda Bynes or whatever her name is, where she wants to play on a boys' soccer team for some goddamn reason, and cuts her hair.
The artsy version of White Chicks.
Well,
okay, or let's not get carried away. No race changes in this movie.
This is the white chicks for a Me Too generation crowd.
the reverse version of Ladybugs.
Oh God!
Instead of a boy becoming a lady soccer player, it's yeah.
So this is none of that. It's a very earnest story with a cast that is mostly, from what I can tell, it's mostly Muslim cast, and or at least culturally, if not necessarily religiously. I can't say for sure. You know, I don't want to put that on anyone specifically because, you know, this is a.
It looks like they did their homework in terms of the cast,
right? And so, you know, this movie is not. Because just because it's an Irish filmmaker in an Irish studio doesn't mean that it's trying to co-opt any culture. It's very heavily based on a book of the same name. And it is a departure for Cartoon Saloon as a studio, though, because the first two features from Cartoon Saloon were both heavily steeped in Irish culture and Irish lore. Mm-hmm. And so this is sort of their attempt to take that in another direction. And in fact, very much like those films like Secret of Kells and Song of the Sea, besides the main storyline, there's an entire subplot involving this folk story that Parvana, the main character, is telling to various people over time. And it sort of becomes a reflection on her own personal hero's journey that she's going through. Yeah. And there's the animation style is different for these dream sequences, the story sequences, so to speak. And I really liked that contrast of animation style, you know, the more rough around the edges style of the dreamy story aspect, and then the dark and realistic style of the scenes, you know, in, you know, Taliban era Afghanistan.
Right.
This is a very adult aimed film. It's not a movie for children to watch.
No, and it kind of has that look about it. It looks like one of those Bible videos you rent from the church library, except better.
Except better.
It's you say dark, but the animation style still has this stylized softness to it.
I mean,
if you were to watch a trailer that had none of the violent parts and without sound, you would think that this is like the next hand-drawn DreamWorks movie. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, you could see that, and there's also a lot of elements in the animation style here that's borrowed, and Cartoon Saloon has done this in the past too, borrowed heavily from Japanese animation. Mm-hmm. Especially the way shots are framed. There's actually a great example is there's a scene early on where the family is having dinner, and the way that shot is framed feels like something right out of a Miyazaki film. And the movie repeats elements like that.
It does have a Miyazaki flavor to it somewhat, yeah.
Well, it's particularly that it has a strong female protagonist going through, you know, a personally traumatizing experience. That is very Miyazaki.
Yeah.
And that a lot of the story takes place in her mind via this dream sequence. That's something that might, you know, that Miyazaki might have done at one point in time. I love this movie, and I've been debating what my favorite animated film of the year is ever since I saw this, because Coco, I would say, is a more, you know, it's a flashier movie. It's, you know, certainly as a technical accomplishment, Coco is superior, but as an emotional gut punch, both films pack, I would say, a very similar hit. And I would
say, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say the Breadwinner might end up edging it out for me just because I admittedly really love the two-dimensional, hand animated style. That's just my preference in animation, and story wise, it's a very of the times story that hit me in the feels, and so I think Breadwinner is probably going to be my favorite animated film of the year.
I think that Coco's surprise villain puts it just behind the Breadwinner in terms of the animated film category for me.
The surprise villain in Coco. Oh, you mean that being a cliche?
Just that and the fact that Coco didn't need a villain.
Yeah, I agree with you that it didn't have to be necessarily a villain. I didn't mind that twist, but I could see it as a cliche that a lot of films, particularly from Pixar, tend to do. So yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from on that. And as a criticism, if you're going to criticize Coco, that would probably be the place to do it.
Yeah. I mean, Coco's great, but
all right,
Breadwinner's better.
Yeah, so that's all I have to say about Breadwinner. Do you have any closing thoughts on it, or?
Not really. Again, the most striking thing is the animation, and I thought that despite the fact that it was all English language, the voice acting was very good.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking forward to seeing more films from Nora Twomey, I think it is.
Yeah.
This is her first feature film. The first two movies of Cartoon Saloon were she co-directed The Secret of Kells, but this is her first as like a solo director. Tom Moore is the director who did Song of the Sea and has the next film in coming out from Cartoon Saloon called Wolf Walkers. That movie is also going to be directed by him. But I hope she gets a chance to do more in the future too.
Totally, yeah.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and move on to probably the biggest release of the weekend. Now, when I say biggest release, I mean this was a weekend that came after Black Panther, and so no movie was going to match up to it. And this movie didn't, because its box office take was not that great. Annihilation.
Which is unfortunate when you think about it, after you see the
unfortunate.
film. Yeah.
I guess the silver lining, though, is that, as you guys probably know, that this movie was screened for a bunch of test audiences, and some audiences didn't really get it. So one producer is like, okay, we got to change this. We got to change the ending, make it more sci-fi action, make it more accessible to people. The other producer said, absolutely not. I'm standing by Alex Garland, and we're leaving this movie the way it is. So the deal they arrived at was that Netflix would purchase the movie for distribution or for streaming in the European territories, while US, China, and Canada would get it theatrically. So the silver lining is that whatever this movie's not making in theaters, they probably made back from whatever Netflix paid for it.
Yeah, I'm sure Netflix paid a pretty penny for it.
I mean, they paid what, $50 million for the fucking Cloverfield Paradox?
Yeah, God.
They seem to overvalue movies, and in terms of for showing them on the streaming service, and Netflix, as far as I know, is in debt, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah, I think Netflix has a business model that relies on. Because its subscribers are constantly paying them every month, their business model, relies on that continued subscription, and so they can continue paying. Even if they're in debt, they can continue paying that out on a monthly basis because they're getting that sustained income.
Right.
It's just on the promise of future returns.
Yeah, they have some tens of billions of short-term debt, if I remember reading that about 6 months ago. But again, like you said, it's that they have to keep paying it off, and then that gives them the power to keep acquiring more things because they're gonna, I think eventually Netflix is going to have plans that lock you into a certain time period.
Yeah.
Or they're going to offer discounted year-long plans so that they have that guaranteed income for an entire year. Like one of my friends just canceled his Netflix subscription in favor of Hulu.
Mm-hmm. Right, which, I mean, if you watch a lot of TV, Hulu is probably the better of the two options. Being perfectly honest, though, I have never had a use for Hulu. I have a subscription to it right now, and I realized just recently that I haven't watched it in over a month, and so I should probably cancel.
Before you cancel, you should really watch Cardinal.
Okay. Yeah. I'll add that to my growing, my incredibly like at this point it's self-aware. My list of
your ever expanding list.
My ever expanding list of shows I should get to at some point.
It's a 6-episode miniseries, but not unlike your list of shows you got to watch. There's something else that grows in the movie Annihilation, besides Fanboy Dick.
What?
It was his attempt to take us back into the movie.
I tried to segue into the Shimmer and Annihilation, which is...
Yeah, but Fanboy Dick, that's where you threw me off.
He tried to shimmy back into the Shimmer.
See, I get that one, but yeah.
Because science fiction fans get an erection.
Oh, I get it now. Okay, it took some explaining.
Because it's a movie with a cast of mostly women, right?
No, actually not that. It's actually in terms of the themes and the way the movie makes you think.
Oh.
Yeah,
I actually really liked how this movie did not, for a single moment, I don't think, really sexualize any of the characters.
No, yeah. I mean, except for the sex scene.
The sex scene was not sexy.
Was not sexual.
It was in any way. Cold and uncomfortable.
Yeah, there were two scenes where you see Natalie Portman either preparing for sex or having sex. And the having sex one is not sexy at all. It's just her back, and it's very mechanical, and it's very, like, she's going through the motions, you know?
Yeah, it's clear that's not a good thing in that scene.
Yeah, it's not good for either individual that's involved. And the other sex scene doesn't happen, but it happens off screen. And it's kind of funny because he says, "Screw you," and she's like, "Okay."
Yeah.
And then they do it.
That was like a fun little, like, loving scene. It was affectionate.
Right, yeah.
It's nothing about the female characters is made
yeah, like we don't
see something that a guy would. It's not. This movie is not for the male gaze in terms of.
Not at all. We don't see them in skimpy clothing. We see like Gina Rodriguez in a tank top, but that's only for comfort. That's not for sexualizing her body. You know.
So let's not harp on this subject too long, because this is, this
is a better movie than that. Yeah.
Yes. That lessens the impact of the fact that this is just a solid, brainy science fiction movie.
Yeah. I would go beyond calling it solid. I thought this was a fantastic film.
Yeah,
solid. I mean, it was a pretty good.
I'm still just stating on my overall opinion of how this movie's going to hold up, but I loved it. When I first saw it, and I still feel that I love the movie. I
can't stop thinking about it.
There's a lot to think about here. So the long and short of the story is. A comet strikes a lighthouse.
Or maybe it's an asteroid. We're not really sure.
Yeah, comet, asteroid, meteor, whatever.
It's something.
A giant object from space strikes
a lighthouse.
A lighthouse in the middle of really nowhere. There isn't a lot of population nearby.
There's like some swamps. It's like a national park or something.
Yeah, there's a small town nearby, but nothing too major, and the government has been hiding the fact that for no discernible reason, this weird oily appearing kind of glow has been emanating and glowing, and they call it the Shimmer because there's really not much else way to describe it. It's this
it's like this refraction of light that's coming off of the center or the epicenter of wherever of the lighthouse,
like a dome of energy.
Almost. And it's a dome. It's in dome form. Yeah, it's like that soapy stuff that comes from oil.
Mm-hmm.
When it hits asphalt or something, and the light hits it a certain way, and it looks rainbowish.
Yeah. Oh, exactly.
It's like that.
And And so this is covering the area, and every year it grows bigger and bigger, and
every week it grows.
Yeah, every week. And at this point, the shimmer is covering a very large swath of land, but it's still in a mostly unpopulated area. So the government has been able to keep it quiet. So Lena, played by Natalie Portman, is a biologist who...
And ex-army.
And ex-soldier who her husband has been missing.
Oscar Isaac,
Oscar Isaac has been missing for months. I think at this point it was like a year, right?
Yeah.
Yes, 12 months.
Yeah, for an entire year. And she is just distraught because she hasn't heard from him. She hasn't even gotten a note saying he's dead, just, basically missing. And finally, one day, he stumbles home. She's given him up for dead, and he stumbles home, but in the weirdest way, because he doesn't seem to recognize her or show any sign of emotion around her. He seems more puzzled at her reaction to his appearance than anything.
Now, it's worth noting that this scene is set up in a way that's very interesting. She's up in her room repainting their old bedroom, and he doesn't pull up in a car or get off a helicopter or even walk into the front door. He's
just walking up the stairs in the background.
And walks up the stairs and kind of just wanders into the room. Mm-hmm. And the scene is framed for a moment like a dream sequence.
Yeah, I thought it was like a flashback or something at first, or like you said, a dream sequence, I didn't think it was real at first. And then when she goes to talk to him downstairs in the dining room and gives him some water and tries to get some information out of him, that's where it's like, okay, this is real. It's just weird.
And it starts with him apparently, first of all, being deliberately obtuse, and then it starts to, the more they talk, it's like there's actually something wrong with him.
Right.
Yeah, and of course he starts having, not of course, but in the scene, he starts to have hemorrhages and he starts bleeding from the mouth. This leads to an ambulance being called over, which then leads to a military outfit capturing the ambulance, capturing him and Natalie Portman, and bringing them to a secure site for observation.
At which point, the person who's sort of the leader of this government operation kind of unveils the story to her, because there's really no other choice, because they're not going to let her go. Everything is under wraps, so you may as well at least give her the story as to why she's being kept. And tells the story of this shimmer, and Natalie Portman hears about one of the things that they say is that everyone who's gone in there has disappeared and has not come out, and the fact that her husband came out of it is a miracle, and they can't figure out why or how. And she volunteers to be one of the next people to go because she feels this inexplicable pull to it, that she needs to find out what the shimmer is and if there's any way that can help fix her husband, whatever it is that's broken in him.
Her husband is also the first person that has ever returned from the shimmer.
Yeah.
Yes.
They've sent group after group of military.
It should be noted military. It should be noted that only military men and women have gone in. This new mission is mostly just female. It's all female scientists and maybe one soldier, female soldier.
I don't think any women have been sent prior to this. Didn't they say that it's only been men?
You may be right. I wanted to say there may have been like one or two women, but I think you're right. I think it's mostly just been male soldiers.
Yeah, I think
this is the first. This because they make a point to say an all female team.
Yes.
And so. The point I think they were saying is that the reason why they chose an all-female team this time was specifically so that from a scientific perspective, because they'd only sent men before, they wanted to test this out and see if results were different this time. Because the sense they give is that they've sent a lot of different teams and
to no result.
Yeah. And what's fascinating about this is, at this point, the teams that have been sent in have to know that this is, essentially a suicide mission, because no one's come back before, and they've had no reports. They can't get like probes in there. They have no scientific data of what's going on inside the shimmer because everything is obscured just to the point where it's, they can't detect anything.
Electronics get disabled.
Yeah, electronics aren't working.
It should also be noted that Lena, part of her dilemma, not just wanting to go into the shimmer and find out what happened to her husband, but another part of it is why did her husband volunteer to go into it? Because she learns it wasn't just him being told to go into it. She learns he actually offered to go into it. Mm-hmm. And so she's trying to figure out, well, if he knew it was a suicide mission, why did he go into it when he's got me to come home to?
Mm-hmm.
And I have a theory on that, which we can go into later.
Oh, okay. Well, I think they say it pretty straight up, though.
Yeah, but that goes into part of the movie's themes about like domestic self-destruction and devolving relationships and growth that comes from that,
right,
personal growth or couple growth, whatever. And that's interesting how it kind of fits into this weird sci-fi world that is very inexplicable and strange.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And without going into too many spoilers, because I really do encourage people to see this movie as cold as possible.
Go see this movie as many times too.
Is there a way, Ken, to once we post this video to add a comment or something in the descriptor of a point to skip to in the video to avoid spoilers? Because I do have a few things I wanted to go over.
Well, sure. I mean,
very spoilery.
That can be done. So
after the point where they go into the shimmer, I think it's hard to discuss this movie without talking about what happens.
Okay, so from this point forward, we're going to say spoiler alert.
Okay, so inside the shimmer, everything seems like a tropical foresty type environment, only everything is, like I said before, like about light being refracted. Mm-hmm. Everything else inside this dome is also refracted, including time, space, and DNA.
To the point where like there's a vine that apparently has 5 different species of flower growing on the same vine.
Or animals that are being combined, crossbreeding in a way, but not really crossbreeding, more like their DNA is being molded into other DNA.
Right. So you see you see an alligator that has like shark teeth inside of it, and this weird double mouth that is really creepy. And there's a lot of things like
there was a like a little mini furry elk type thing. It looked like a Pokemon. And there's a second one, and they both use the same frames of animation, which I thought like that seems cheap for a second. But then when the movie goes on and explains itself more, you're like, oh, that really is just the shimmer is replicating DNA in that way to build its own thing.
Right, and if you notice in that particular scene where Natalie Portman sees those 2 elk, they're moving in exact rhythm.
That's what I mean. Yeah,
that's what you meant. Okay.
Yeah, like if it looks like the animation of one was copy and pasted onto the other one.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it did kind of
move like that, perfectly in sync.
But I think that was like you just said, that was purposeful. Yes. That was meant to be that way. The movie unveils and unravels the shimmer very slowly, but it never feels long. And the movie never feels like it's 5 hours or anything like that.
Yeah, no. This I've heard people accuse this movie of feeling like it goes too long. I disagree with that. I think this is a movie that trusts you to follow its flow, and it really it
has a good flow to it. Yeah,
it's methodical, and it takes you through unveiling a little bit of it at a time, and
it's got little chapters in it too, like the location or the shimmer. Or
I like that. I like that stylistic choice.
Yeah.
One thing that's really creepy about the shimmer and how it works is, as mentioned earlier, it is the way it refracts DNA results in some weird phenomena, such as plants that are in the shape of human beings, not just human beings, but human corpses.
Yes.
And this is because there are bodies littered throughout the Shimmer of people who
went into the Shimmer,
went into it and were corrupted by the weird DNA changes that occurred to them.
Like, for example, there's that one guy who we see video of. We see Lena's husband, although the team doesn't know it's Lena's husband.
Mm-hmm.
She makes a point not to tell them that information, and they find out a little later on. But anyways, they see a diary video of Lena's husband, played by Oscar Isaac, cutting open a fellow soldier very carefully in the stomach to unveil that the intestines and the organs are all moving.
Yes,
like a snake or something. You know,
that was a hell of a scene.
And he's not, and the guy's not bleeding from this at all. The blood is just being redirected.
He looks more miserable that there's shit moving inside of him than it is that his stomach just got cut open.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And then we see that guy later on. What's left of him has been turned into this moss-covered, cancerous-looking form of plants and weeds that's grown on this wall, and it's really inventive and disturbing at the same time to see that.
Yeah.
Right.
The movie goes on from there, and obviously at some point these characters have to start getting picked off. The first one that gets picked off is she's like Shepard. She's like a security, and also I think she's a scientist too. She gets picked off by a bear that reappears later in probably one of the more frightening scenes I've ever seen in the history of cinema. In my history of cinema, especially modern cinema.
Yes.
Basically, what happens is this bear reappears, and its mouth structure, it resembles that of a person. And when it lets out a yawn or a scream, it's in the voice of Shepard.
Yeah, like it's the bear has no face either.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
I've got a really quick. I told Kenneth already, but Bill, I've got a terrific piece of trivia on the bear. This movie shares a VFX director credit or a VFX designer credit with Paddington 2. So this guy named the skeleton bear Paddington.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, it's creepy as fuck.
I still call it Skelebear.
Yeah. It's something like that. But it's the scene is done so quietly yet violently. You know what I mean? Like there's like this violence of silence.
You know what it reminds me of? The fact that the roar of this animal are basically a person's screams. It reminds me of the video game Half-Life 2, where the zombies in Half-Life 2 are they're not like the zombies you get in George Romero movies. They're zombies are basically humans whose mind has been taken over by this giant face-hugging parasite that forces them to do things. And in Half-Life 2, the roars that the zombies have, if you listen very carefully, are the voice of a person screaming out in terror, like, get this off me. Yeah. Things like that.
It's kind of like that. And they even, when they get out of that ordeal, they kind of speculate that a part of Shepard is still alive in that bear. And it's the part of her that was being attacked and in terror.
Mm-hmm.
So
which was kind of a piece of dialogue after the fact.
A little, but at the same time, it was good to note that they were thinking about it like that, and they were speculating in the first place, and they're like, look, to live like that forever must be fucking awful,
But it's the way the line was written and delivered is like, oh, I certainly wouldn't want that to happen to me. It's like, no fucking shit.
Yeah.
But no, it's good that they pointed it out too. It's like I wish they would have written the line a little bit differently.
Well, that character who says that, played by Tessa Thompson, ends up going through an interesting transformation herself. When most of the characters have been picked off, and it's just Jennifer Jason Leigh, Natalie Portman, and Tessa Thompson. Tessa Thompson's character, she had been. We see glimpses of her body throughout the movie, and it's assumed that she had a suicidal past, or at the very least, a past where she enjoyed cutting herself.
Oh, remember, yeah, it wasn't suicidal because
to feel alive or something. Yeah,
Shepard points out, yeah, she wants to feel something.
Right, and part of this movie is about depression a little bit, or a lot of it actually. And her character kind of gives up. She's like, I don't think I want to face this thing or fight it. I just don't want either of those things. And she walks away and never to be seen again. And it's kind of assumed that she kind of gets consumed by the nature around her and ends up becoming part of it.
And what's interesting about this is it seems like the only way to truly survive the effects of the shimmer is just pure willpower, like your ability to overcome the to overcome just this horrible experience. And it's very, you were saying that it reflects depression. Depression is something that is, it's such a horrible killer of people. Not just like, you know, killer as in like suicide, but killer as in, you know, soul crushing, because they find it very difficult to just, you know, it's very easy to tell someone, hey, cheer up. Why are you so sad all the time? It's like, that's not how my body chemistry is designed. It just, my body's working against me in this case.
And that's another interesting thing about the movie, is that it's not just refracting DNA and light and time, but also mood in a weird way too. It's like just everything's being spread amongst this environment.
The shimmer is literally a cancer.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So actually, that death leads me to this theory. I already ran it past you, Bill, the other day, but I have this theory about the shimmer. So Ken, both you guys, and Ken especially, since you haven't heard this yet, tell me what you think about this. And Bill, you've had time to think about it too. Is that the shimmer gives each main character what they were looking for? So first, and we'll talk about how the movie ends, but Lena, she gets to learn what happened to her husband. Ventress, her main thing was that she wants to get to the lighthouse and figure out what this is, just the source of the shimmer. She wants to be enlightened. She gets that. Josie, Tessa Thompson's character, she says, oh, some people want to fight this and some people want answers. I don't think I want either one of those things. So she submits to the shimmer and becomes a part of it. And I would think that is a willful thing, because she was also very fascinated at her revelation that the shimmer refracts DNA. So this to her was the ultimate scientific breakthrough in her field.
Right.
I don't know how that ties into her past of cutting to feel something. The Anya is the one that I don't really get that much.
Well, she just got fucked over by the animal. I mean,
she did, but that's because she came into the shimmer looking for a fight. She is in constant attack mode.
Right, and her behavior prior to being attacked was very paranoid and very aggressive.
So the shimmer reacted to that and replied thusly.
Yeah,
and
then you know what? To paraphrase Star Wars, bring not your weapon. You'll need it not, or how whatever Yoda says to tell Luke. The cave scene in Empire. Yeah, basically, the only thing comes in the cave is what you take. I am fucking up a quoting of Empire Strikes Back.
And so Shepard, in the scene where there's this really great scene of exposition and character building when they're rowing through the river, and they're kind of just in a lesser film, this would be an exposition dump, but it was a really great way to introduce the characters in who they are. Shepard, she mentioned, everybody lost somebody, so on and so forth. Shepard just lost her daughter, and she said, I didn't just lose my daughter, but I lost the person I was with, meaning that her daughter was her entire world. She lives for nothing now, and she probably went into the shimmer still carrying that burden on her shoulders. I just want my daughter. I wish my daughter was back with me. She's the first to die because the shimmer is like, okay, here you go. You're dead now. I'll kill you. And she gets dragged away and murdered, thus being reunited with her daughter.
Do you want me to blow your mind here a little bit? I don't know if you've thought of this yet. Hawk, but I not only do I think you're right, but I have an example that's even more powerful here.
Okay.
So Natalie Portman, what does she ultimately want above all things?
I would say she wants her husband back and maybe even to be forgiven.
Yeah.
She wants a clean start.
Clean start. Okay.
And the Shimmer gives her that, because not only, and this is where we get into end of movie spoilers. So if you don't want to know exactly how this movie ends, then so Oscar Isaac, the real Oscar Isaac.
She goes into the lighthouse and she finds a video camera with a video file on it.
Yes.
Yeah. First she sees a corpse in the corner of the room.
Let me get to my point here, because I have a definite point here. So. So Oscar Isaac, the person who was her husband, is dead.
Yeah.
The person who was her husband and knows that she was cheating on her is dead. And what's replaced him is a near perfect duplicate of him who doesn't know that she cheated on him, and therefore is open to giving her a fresh start. And not just a fresh start from the beginning, but truly starting over, because the only recognition he has of her is the fact that he knew that at some point, that she was important in the life of the husband.
And he recognizes the house, too, because that house appears in the Shimmer.
Right. So he recognizes that she's an important part of his life. He just has no memory of that life beyond that. And so that gives her the opportunity to do a complete restart to their relationship, which is something I would argue she's pining for, because she knows that she fucked up in a big way by cheating on him.
Yeah.
So, like I said, that's kind of the mind blower here, is that she gets the ultimate restart.
Now, things get a little murky after that is cleared up, when at the very, very end, when the movie's wraparound is that she's being interviewed by scientists. She's made it out of the Shimmer. They want to know how, so she recounts her story. Mm-hmm. Well, she meets back up with the doppelganger of her husband, and she asks him, like, are you Kane? Are you my husband? And he's like, I don't think I am. And then she, embraces him for a second, and we see in his eyes the glow of the Shimmer, which makes sense. And then the camera turns around, and we see in Lena's eyes a little bit of Shimmer too.
Which I think I have an explanation for this. That
so it's a little like, well, okay, is she a doppelganger, or is the Shimmer living inside her? Or
so here's my theory that I've developed for that final ending, because that scene is sort of the Inception top spin of the movie.
Yeah,
that it hints at something a little more. My theory is that, and this actually goes to what the Shimmer was to begin with, which the Shimmer we know is something from outer space. It's some sort of alien thing. Whether it's a life form or not, I'm not sure. Like, whether it's something we would conceive of as a life form, but it has the ability to create life or terraform to some extent. So here's my theory. My theory is whatever it is that the Shimmer was, came to Earth looking for a way to continue survival, like any species of animal or plant. Like the prime directive of that creature is survival, and being the Shimmer, the Shimmer refracting life on Earth, was it trying desperately to find the right way to fit into the ecosystem that Earth is. And it was failing for a long time. It couldn't quite figure it out, because there's so much to learn about how a living creature survives on Earth. And then finally, at the end, between her and Oscar Isaac, it makes the connection of survival. And so my theory is that the two of them are going to continue to live out their lives very much as humans would, but they have been in some way sort of assimilated into this whatever creature the Shimmer is. And while the Shimmer itself was more or less destroyed, what the essential DNA component that was this initial thing is now a part of it's now assimilated itself in more or less completely into the ecosystem of Earth.
Would you consider that similar to Adam and Eve leaving the Garden of Eden after it was destroyed?
Yeah,
Ooh, I don't know if I'd go that far, but maybe.
I could kind of see something like that. Instead of being cast out per se, of the
not cast out, but they leave to create to live in the world and build it outside of the shelter of the garden.
Yeah, I could see elements of that. The point is, from a scientific perspective, this, if we're going to call the Shimmer whatever its essential element was, some sort of living creature, this creature knew that it needed to continue existing, and the only way that it was going to do that without wiping out all of the ecology of Earth was to become a part of that ecology. And so it took all of this time for it to come to that realization, whether it was a cognitive realization where it made the conscious effort to become part of it, or whether it needed the essential DNA of humanity to give it that push. Maybe it's the fact that humans are not just a thinking being, but capable of complex thought, complex and emotion. Maybe that was the essential DNA, and the fact that no women had gone into the Shimmer before. It couldn't figure out how to, and maybe that's where Oscar Isaac came from. Maybe the men that the Shimmer took were basically, it was like, okay, well, this is part of what I need, but how do I continue existing beyond, this? We need to reproduce in some way, and
okay.
The Shimmer's like, I need pussy.
Well,
yes,
here's the thing. It has tried to reproduce by combining all of these species together, and that always resulted in these horrible abominations. And so maybe it finally, through natural selection, realized that to propagate itself, it needed two of the same species, and perhaps the touch of humanity is what gave it the ability to come to that realization. See, I'm really brainstorming the fuck out of this.
You're digging your teeth into it. I like it. There are two things I like about the ending. One, Lena does not tell them that she believes this Kane is a doppelganger or is a Shimmer creation.
Right.
She does not tell them that, so that way they can be released and all that. And two, if you notice on Lena's arm, she has a tattoo in the scenes where she's in the lab after the fact, where before, when she went into the Shimmer, she didn't have a tattoo.
Right. There's no tattoo parlors in the Shimmer.
So to me, that suggests that parts of the other women that were on their team, the other scientists, were refracted into each other, and that includes what may have been on their skin, as well. So I'm guessing that goes when we see her, the glow in her eyes, the shimmer in her eyes, that might be part of it too. That part of the Shimmer has already is now a part of her, no matter what. Even though she made it out alive, and she seems pretty, with it and all there in the head and everything. She still contains whatever the Shimmer had.
I actually kind of lean more towards a theory that she is a doppelganger.
Really?
Because you sound like you don't like that.
Yeah,
no, I don't dislike it.
I'm intrigued. What is the reason?
Yeah. What is it?
So at the beginning of the movie, Lena is giving a speech to her students that all life originated from the same basic cells, interlinked. And it's and everything originated from those, whether it was from this Earth or from somewhere in the universe. And then there's this scene which we don't need to get into too much, but the Shimmer builds a kind of metallic, greenish, like featureless, faceless doppelganger that mirrors her every move. Mm-hmm. And eventually, after a lengthy, interesting sequence of the Shimmer doppelganger mirroring her every move, she does what Oscar Isaac's character did and pulls a phosphorus grenade, hands it to the doppelganger, and runs. And the doppelganger kind of looks at her and starts quivering and shimmering. I'm sorry. The doppelganger gets her features and then gets an exact mirror copy of her. So it's two Natalie Portmans. The quote-unquote real one hands a phosphor grenade to the doppelganger. It blows up and she starts shimmering and breaking apart and then sets the lighthouse on fire and so on and so forth. I think that scene was calling back to the original speech in that we are all built from the same original building blocks of matter and cells. So that phosphorus grenade just broke down. It was handed to the real Natalie Portman, the real Lena, and it broke her down into the doppelganger base form. And that was the real one that was left there in the Shimmer.
See, I'm going to go ahead and disagree with you on this just because I think they make it pretty clear that the doppelganger was being created and she destroyed her own doppelganger. There are no tricks, as far as I can tell, that insinuate that she turned into the doppelganger or something like that. I'm willing to entertain that as a possible theory, but I don't think. I think that the Natalie Portman that came out of the Shimmer is the same one who walked into it, albeit heavily changed by the experience.
Yeah.
And so from a cellular level.
My only counter to that is that it takes Lena a little bit to realize this doppelganger is mimicking her every move, like to the point where it's pinning her against the wall, and it's crushing her, and then she realizes, like, okay, it's copying me, so all I got to do is relax, and it'll get off of me. And I think that could lead later on to, okay, so it's not only mirroring me, it is me. So that is the ultimate fresh start. So she's not only leaving the Shimmer and knows about it because her husband is been reborn, but she herself has not even committed that act yet, and it's truly wiping the slate clean. And also the Shimmer with Scalabear taking on Shepard's scream and so on and so forth. The Shimmer has created an amalgamation of all of the women that were in there and sent out a doppelganger.
The main reason I'm not quite ready to accept that theory is because Oscar Isaac's character is, and they make it very explicit, is the doppelganger. Mm-hmm. And they make it clear that he does not have all of the memories that Oscar Isaac has. And Natalie Portman's character has, I mean, she's missing some memories here and there, but she has clear memories of her past.
She does. And I think that's one of two things. One, it goes back into my Adam and Eve theory of the Shimmer creating an Adam and Eve thing. With the female being the mother of all life, the blueprint of everything.
It's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve.
Yeah, and the man being the necessary, let's just say, ingredient to cultivate life. Secondly, I suspect, I could be wrong, but I suspect that the framing device of Lena being interrogated by the guys in the clean room, it was a later addition to make the film a little more accessible and smooth. I would be completely unsurprised to learn that that framing device of the interrogation was not in the original draft of the script.
Actually, I think someone tweeted parts of the original script, and indeed the framing device was not in there.
Yeah, so, I would actually argue the framing device is probably the film's Achilles heel.
I didn't like it. Yeah,
it's not bad. It's just
it gives away from the beginning that Natalie Portman is more or less going to be alive at the end of this movie.
But in what way? That's the question.
Which is a question, and the film does have mystery that goes beyond that. but I don't think it was necessary to continually go into that, and it was also very awkward because it's like, so how long are those scientists just standing there staring at her, listening to her story?
Yeah, they were behind the mirror, just looking at her.
Yeah, but they're standing the whole fucking time. I mean, get a chair.
Yeah, at no point is Benedict Wong like, man, I'm tired. Should we take a lunch break?
I'm parched.
I'm standing here very awkwardly for hours listening to this lady tell my story.
So, but you don't rent water.
Consider if you were to take all of those scenes out, and the only scenes you would have is of that clean room type thing, as the very end where Natalie Portman leaves and goes to doppelganger Kane. If you were to have only that, then you would have basically the same type of character as doppelganger Kane, who is quiet, doesn't say much, doesn't know much, because when Kane says, are you the real Lena, she doesn't respond at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you would remove that framing device, then it would completely, she wouldn't know anything she wouldn't obviously know anything having coming out of the shimmer.
Maybe. The only other piece of information from the movie that kind of supports that is the fact that we never see her being rescued by the scientists or the army. Well,
right.
They explain it to her. They say, after the shimmer dissipated, we found you near the lighthouse and we took you in.
Well, the last lines of the movie, she asks him whether he is the real Kane, and his response is, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Right.
Yeah. And then he asks her if she's the real Lena, and she does not respond. I think, to be honest, it is left intentionally ambiguous. I think it is, but
it's also perhaps that she's questioning it herself. Maybe she's like, geez, I don't think I'm the same one that went in, like I mean, she is the exact same one, but I don't think like mentally or emotionally she's changed. She's grown.
I think I'm going to put this in the category of like Blade Runner replicants, where they are so incredibly advanced from a technical level that to call a replicant anything but human in terms of what they're capable of feeling is disingenuous, because it may be artificially created, but for all intents and purposes, this is a living creature that is fully capable of rational thought. And
right.
So, so saying, I guess to an extent, regardless of whether you or I are right on whether this was the same Lena that actually physically walked into the shimmer, the point is the Lena that we have here got what she wanted.
Or got what the other Lena wanted.
Yeah, got what exactly. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move on. We've talked about Annihilation for nearly an hour.
We annihilated that conversation.
Yeah.
Speaking of Blade Runner, did you guys even catch my reference I made a few minutes ago?
To Blade Runner? I don't think so.
Is it her speech at the beginning being about cells interlinked?
Oh, I guess not.
Yeah, I must have missed it. I mean, I remember you saying that. I just don't remember thinking Blade Runner when you said it.
I mean, didn't have much to do with Blade Runner, but it was his conditioning exercise that Kay did in the police station.
Yeah, right.
They'd repeat the words over and over again, and they'd test whether or not he was responding emotionally to him.
Yeah.
So speaking of responding emotionally, how about the movie Mute, ladies and gentlemen?
Mute is not as good as Annihilation.
I didn't see it. I'm so sad because it's a Duncan Jones movie, and he even said that
it's a Dunkin' Donuts movie.
Dunkin' Donuts movie. He called it a spiritual sequel to Moon. So is it?
Well, okay. That depends on how you define a spiritual sequel. In this movie, you have a shot of a TV, of a courtroom, of 20-something Sam Rockwell's saying, "No, I'm the real guy from Moon."
Wait, that actually happens in this movie?
Yeah. That's it. I mean, that's literally it as far as Moon is concerned. What's the character's name in Moon?
I think his name is Moon.
It's
Moon. Yeah, his character is Moon. That's right.
Yeah, you have a bunch of Moons sitting in a courtroom. They're like, "No, I'm the real Moon. No, I am."
His character is Sam Bell.
Sam Bell. I'm the real Sam Bell. no me, and then
it becomes
TV
a
turns off. Like
skit.
that's it. There's a tiny bit of flavor of that movie, but it's kind of just it exists in the same universe, and that's really it. There's none of the themes or events of Moon.
It sounds like a Benny Hill skit.
So I'm gonna lead off with the main question before you start. Is Moon worth watching?
Mute.
Is Mute worth watching?
Mute.
Moon is definitely worth watching.
Is Mute worth watching?
Yeah.
Mute is worth watching on how to not write a fucking screenplay.
Ooh. Okay.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So tell us about it.
I know. So Will was kind of mixed on it. He didn't really, have any major emotional thoughts either way based on what he told me. Mm-hmm. I hated it. I thought it was awful. Which pains me to say because I think Duncan Jones is a really interesting filmmaker. Moon was great. I really loved Source Code. I think Warcraft was a passionate piece of work that was.
I don't think it was a hot mess, but I would agree passionate.
You can look at Warcraft and say the guy that made this really wanted to make a cool Warcraft movie.
Yeah.
Some of it didn't make sense. Yeah, so a lot of it was rushed, but I mean,
it looked cool. Like the creature design and production design was really good. But the movie was just it was so wrong-headed in so many ways. Like I've said this before in the chat, but Warcraft literally depressed me. Not because it was a bad adaptation of Warcraft, because it's a grim fucking movie for being an adaptation of a high fantasy video game. Like half the cast dies really horribly.
I didn't see it as being as grim. I just saw it as being
I was bummed out. Like every few minutes, it's like, oh well, that main character died really violently.
It is the most expensive. It is the most expensive fan film ever made because it does not play to people who are not familiar with Warcraft. I did not understand a goddamn thing that was happening in that movie.
Yeah, what Fell was.
I didn't have too much trouble following it, but
yeah, these are the Hookanooks from the planet.
Some things felt like they were
Wizard of Glaxon.
The movie felt like it had excised portions of it that were taken from before the movie came out, and then it comes out, and you can tell there were scenes missing. That would have explained.
It was like kind of like it was better. I liked what it did better than it was like, oh, we're about to enter the land of Grom. The farmers here are the sole source of wheat for the entire kingdom, and like they just have expository dialogue for 10 fucking minutes so that everybody can get up to speed. It just kind of hucks you into this world and you just kind of just get to feel it. But there wasn't enough of that world to feel.
Or the weird wizard guy, the young wizard guy with the half mustache, the half grown mustache. Like it was like all faded and everything. And they're like, "What the fuck are you doing in my palace, wizard?" He's like, "I'm here to talk to you about Fell." Norman Fell?
So anyway,
what
the Gromniks are fighting the Heimsmischen, and I am sorry, that movie made no goddamn sense. It was like watching a foreign language film without subtitles.
Oh,
I just couldn't follow.
Paula Patton, dude, she didn't make any sense in that movie. Like,
all right, well, anyway,
go ahead about Mute. Let's talk about Mute. Yeah.
And I maybe was a little bit aggressive earlier when I said Mute is a great example of how to not write a fucking screenplay. And if Duncan Jones ever listens to this podcast episode and hears that, I apologize, but I feel very strongly about this movie because it really upset me. So Mute opens with a young boy falling out of a boat, and he's had a boat accident. He falls out of the boat, and the boat propellers basically shred his neck open. And they paddle back to the shore for no reason, and they take him to the hospital, and they're like, "Oh, we can save him with his surgery. We can get, otherwise he's not gonna have a voice." And his parents are like, "No, because we're Amish."
Okay.
First of all, bullshit, because you can get surgery if you're Amish. The non-surgery thing is Orthodox, I think, but I Googled it. The Amish prefer to use spiritual healing and help God heal them and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
but if you need medical attention, like your fucking throat is torn open, then you're going to get medical attention because you kind of need it. So anyway, fast forward.
Yeah.
What?
I was going to say it probably depends from community to community, but I know that some don't do blood transfusions.
Yeah.
The blood transfusion is not reconstructive surgery on your
except you normally need like blood to be administered. So
yeah, but I mean, again, the bottom line for that, for the most part, is if they need it, they can get it. I mean, even some Amish business people have cell phones for their business. It's they've really kind of changed things lately when they were like, okay, well, God's not going to field my phone calls to my clients. Fast forward a few years, this guy played by Alexander Skarsgård. Now I can't remember his name. Who cares? But he is a bartender, and he's dating this girl with blue hair, and
he's also mute.
He's also mute because he didn't get surgery when he was younger. And, she's like, hey, I know you're Amish, but here's a cell phone so we can talk to each other via text sometimes. And, then she's...
I like how he's Amish in the future.
Yeah. And,
like the Amish would be able... I'm not saying that they're not strong enough to last in the future, but in like a neo-noir future...
I mean, it's not like...
Amish out there?
It's not like the Shakers. The Shakers was a religious group that literally didn't fuck, and so they disappeared because they didn't fuck.
So I guess the Amish... Yeah, okay.
That's another major problem with this movie is that the cyberpunk setting for this movie is so insignificant that reportedly in a second draft of the script, it was not present.
Mm-hmm.
In a second draft rewrite of the script, it was in modern times, and then they put it back into cyberpunk. That is how inconsequential to everything that the cyberpunk setting is. All this amounts to is, hey, Blade Runner looks cool, and that's it. There's some technology and some this and that, and somebody was like, oh, it's kind of like plays into him being Amish. He's Amish in a world of technology, and he belongs even less because not only is he mute, he doesn't really belong. He doesn't belong because he's Amish in a technology world. But the technology is never really made that big of a thing in the world. There's the cell phone, there's drones that deliver your food, which I would argue makes bartenders kind of, not necessary, but they have them anyway.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little bit of CG, like the hologram stuff. Like it's just kind of messy. Like the world itself looks really cool. There's a lot of flavor to it, but it means nothing in the context of the story. So anyway, his girlfriend, she's like, oh, I need to tell you something. And he's like, oh, you're breaking up with me? And she's like, no, I just got to tell you this. But she doesn't. And then she disappears. And
that was that important.
Yeah, and then he has to go find her. The second half of this, or the other side of these events, is a pair of American. This takes place in Berlin, by the way. A pair of American surgeons. Oh. One is played by Paul Rudd, and one is played by Justin Theroux, and they're gay with each other sometimes, but not all the time. And Paul Rudd has an epic handlebar mustache and a daughter. And they.
I have a lot of questions just based on that description.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, that was a joke, but I mean, like, you ran through that description like really quickly. Like, they're sometimes gay for each other. Oh, Paul Rudd has a mustache and he has a daughter.
Okay, so Paul Rudd, you just got to look up Paul Rudd in this movie. His mustache is amazing. It is one of the best mustaches I've ever seen in a movie. And he's got his best friend is Justin Theroux, and yes, sometimes they call each other babe and they hold hands, but other times they just talk to each other like, just like there's this weird lack of consistency to their dynamic that kind of threw me off. So like later on when they're holding hands and running through the mall together, I was like, wait a second, what did I miss? Did I actually look away from the screen for too long? It's just
so
very
I have to mention, I just looked up Paul Rudd's mustache in mute, and I know you called it a handlebar, but to me it's like it's like finely groomed trucker.
Yeah, that's not a bad one either.
Yeah.
I mean, not a bad analogy either.
I'm not saying you're wrong, because I don't know technically what the definition of handlebar mustache is. I know one when I see one, To me, this says trucker who just happens to be really, really concerned about self-grooming.
It certainly seems like it. Now, I have no problem with these two characters, by the way, being gay. That's totally fine. I love that. But they never really established them as being in a relationship. So when they are holding hands and saying babe, I was like, okay, where in the movie was this actually established? I thought they were just best friends.
It's just this weird relationship thing that just keeps popping up, and it's very ambiguous.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So the bartender, whose name I should really just look up so I can stop calling him the bartender. Or
his name is mute.
Yeah, probably. Oh, it's Leo.
It's like it's Sam Rockwell's Moon.
Exactly.
He's moving.
Bad script writing.
That is a Family Guy joke. He goes looking for his girlfriend, and he asks questions here and there, and then also the two surgeons are trying to get back to America as well because they're tired of Berlin. And they're just doing jobs for the mafia here and there, or for this and that, and just trying to get their papers in order for getting back to America. And then, surprise, Justin Theroux's character is a pedophile.
Oh, God.
Yeah, for not really any reason at all. I would say spoiler alert, but it's not even really a spoiler. It's just kind of a thing that happens. The movie takes a turn, and Justin Theroux is a pedophile. Paul Rudd, and actually, there's this really, really creepy scene where Justin Theroux is making he makes prosthetic limbs for patients, mostly children. Which the reason being is revealed later on, but there's a part where he gets this girl this new prosthetic leg, and she's walking on a treadmill, and the back of her hospital gown is open slightly, and he is filming her from behind.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ew?
Yeah.
Jesus,
yeah.
Yeah.
And then Paul Rudd later on in the movie stumbles into his buddy's lab, and he finds a camera in the changing room. And then he confronts him, and it's like, hey, you can't do this. This is messed up. You can't do this. This is horrible. And he like throws him against the wall, and it's like threatening him. And it's like, if anybody finds out, you are in trouble, my friend. And then he gets a phone call saying that his papers are cleared, and he can go to America. And he's like, oh, let's go to the mall. And the two of them go to the mall, and they have hamburgers, and they threaten a security guard.
Wait, what?
This takes place in the future, and there are still malls.
No, that's your question about that sequence of events?
Yes, that is my question.
Because I feel like tonally, the guy was like, dude, you're a creep. Let's go to the mall.
Yep.
That's the two tones. Like, dude, fuck you, you're a pedophile. Hey, let's go hang out at the mall and have hamburgers.
That is almost literally the exchange of dialogue.
Like, what?
I will find the timestamp later tonight, and I will tell you what it is, so you can go find that exact scene transition from Paul Rudd saying, you are a pedophile. He gets the phone call saying, oh, we're great, my friend. Let's go to the mall. And then a hard cut to Paul Rudd driving their car down the freeway, and Justin Theroux sticking out of the sunroof and surfing, like, yeah, woo!
What kind of movie is this? I don't even know. Based on what you've been telling us about this movie, I can't even tell you what this movie's about.
It's not about anything. It's like it's,
if there's a plot
disconnect between Joe looking for his girlfriend, and
I thought his name was
Paul Rudd and Justin Theroux doing their thing. It is two movies fighting for the same story.
Does this ever
fighting for the same movie? It's two stories fighting for the same movie. I'm sorry.
Do these two stories ever intersect?
Yeah, they do.
Okay.
And there's a couple things there that I kind of liked, like, Joe is texting his girlfriend and she's responding, and it turns out that it's Justin Theroux's character just responding back to fuck with him for not really any reason, but I kind of like the fact that it's like, okay, the girlfriend that goes missing does tie into Paul Rudd's character arc, or it ties back to that character, I guess, not his arc. So they do kind of intersect somewhat. And then another problem with the pedophilia thing, which this is even worse. Like, this is where people are like, what the fuck? Paul Rudd gets killed by Joe, and it is a pretty good scene. He attacks him, and then, of course, Alexander Skarsgård is probably a full foot at least taller than Paul Rudd, drives a massive knife through his neck and just leaves him to bleed out on the ground. And then Justin Theroux shows up and sees him on the ground bleeding out. He's like, oh, well, you should have been nicer to me. And then there's down in this basement, there is a monitor of the camera that's in Paul Rudd's daughter's room, so he can just keep an eye on her and make sure she's safe, because he's very, very protective of her. So making sure that he can see it, Justin Theroux turns the screen so that it's in eyesight, and then goes into the room, picks up the daughter, and leaves with her, with the implication being, hey, your last dying thought is, I'm going to go rape your daughter. He doesn't do that, thankfully. But it's such a sour fucking thing to do in a movie for no reason, to make that insinuation of a character.
No shit.
Yeah, really. So what does he do with the daughter? He just protects her?
He has her for a while. It's assuming that, of course, with his proclivities, he's going to eventually do something. But then Joe tracks him down. And throughout the movie, Joe does this thing where he will hold his breath and go swimming, or hold his breath and take a drink of water. And I think what they were insinuating is that he's trying to overcome his fear of water and of drowning, given his accident when he was a child that rendered him mute.
Yeah.
But it really is only a reason for Joe to kill Justin Theroux by grabbing onto him and then jumping into the water and holding his breath longer than he can until Justin Theroux dies and drowns. And that's it.
I still don't know what this movie's about. I'm sorry.
It's not about anything. It's about this mute bartender trying to find his girlfriend, and these two surgeons trying to get back to America. And then nothing else really happens until the movie has
It's a future world.
Yeah.
Like, why did it have to be a future world?
Again,
now, and it would make
there's no reason. Yeah, exactly. There's no reason for it to be a future world. There's a part where Justin Theroux installs a voice box for Joe, so just so he could say that he was sorry for killing Paul Rudd. But Justin Theroux left Paul Rudd to die and could have taken him. He even says, "Oh, we could get you to a hospital, or even back to my place." And then he decides not to. But then this movie forgets what it was doing elsewhere in the movie every new scene.
It's a very loose movie.
It's an incredibly loose movie.
It's loosey-goosey. Hey, man, no worries, baby. About a story or a plot line. We're just having fun.
It's one of the most
interesting disasters I've seen in a very long time. I've seen it twice now, and I'll probably keep watching it because I really want to pick apart where exactly this thing fell apart, especially with Duncan Jones being... He's been trying to make this movie for 15 years.
Right.
That's really
now we know
sad.
why, because it was a hot mess to begin with.
Well, I can't remember where I read this. He only added in some things after his dad died and he had his kid. And the speculation is that the pedophilia was one of those things that he added, which makes it like extra shitty. I would love to sit down with Duncan Jones in a really candid, nobody's going to get mad, I promise, interview and be like, what happened, man? Like, I just want to know where your thought process was on making this movie, because, again, I love Duncan Jones. I think his directing stuff, even with Warcraft being a disaster, the movie looked good. Duncan Jones knows how to make a movie visually and how to direct, but everything else here's an interesting point. He did not write Moon. He did not write Source Code. He wrote Warcraft, and he wrote Mute.
Okay, so we know where the problem lies.
We know where the problem is.
Yeah.
Anyway, I would encourage you guys to just kind of like maybe not watch the whole thing, but skim through it just to kind of see like the really just interesting mistakes this movie makes. It's not really anything in terms of directing or editing. It's just it doesn't come together at all, and that's really, really sad to me because I thought Mute would be cool. I really wanted it to be awesome. I love cyberpunk. I like the idea, but even the fact that Joe is mute has kind of no bearing on the story at all, except for the fact that he can't say, "I'm looking for my girlfriend who is named this," and the movie kind of diminishes his character to the point where mute equals oafish buffoon. He's like an idiot through the whole movie because he can't communicate. That's the point that he appears to be trying to make.
Yeah.
I can't talk, so I'll punch people.
That makes me sad.
That's so horrible. I can't even begin to.
Honestly, I said that Cloverfield Paradox was the most disappointing movie since Batman v Superman, and I think I was primed a bit going into Mute, seeing the 8% Rotten Tomatoes score.
Mm-hmm.
But had I not seen that, I would have been absolutely heartbroken by this movie.
Yeah, I can at least tell you what Cloverfield Paradox was about. I can't tell you what Nude is about.
And maybe I didn't really give a great rundown of the plot because I kind of just gave you guys an emotional stream of consciousness on why this movie made me so upset.
I kind of prefer your take on it than watching it, actually.
Yeah, I think I get it now.
But that's all I have to say on that. It's just...
In fact, we should just do a series of audiobooks where you describe movies in like 5 minutes or less, or 10 minutes or less, or something like that.
How sad is Alexander Skarsgård's fucking career at this point?
It's kind of a bummer.
He can't catch a fucking break. I mean, Straw Dogs was a failure.
Well, was that a good movie though, or was it a bad movie? I don't remember.
It's
Alexander.
It's not bad. It's just it has no reason to exist because it basically is beat for beat the original movie, and it doesn't develop enough of an identity on its own.
What about Melancholia? He was in Melancholia.
Okay, that was the same year as Straw Dogs. So
yeah.
I'll say that that was solidly the last decent movie he was in, because after that you have friggin' The Giver, Diary of a Teenage Girl, Zoolander 2, War on Everyone.
You didn't like Diary of a Teenage Girl?
No.
Okay.
Legend of Tarzan. It just...
I think he was also in that Taylor Kitsch Navy movie, Battleship.
Yeah, the Taylor Kitsch movie.
Oh, God.
That was his fault.
Yeah,
that was a good one.
Taylor Kitsch and Alexander Skarsgård in the same movie. Now that is disaster.
That was Battleship, Bill?
Yes, it was Battleship, yeah.
You know, the movie with the battleships.
I called it the Taylor Kitsch Navy movie. It's supposed to be.
I did not hate
a fucking board game.
Speaking of board games,
ooh, that's a good one.
Woo! Oh, hey,
that was a hell of a segue.
I did a thing.
That was a great thing.
Celebrate good time.
So I just saw Game Night a couple of hours ago, and I thought it was extremely funny.
Yes, Game Night impressed the fuck out of me because I went in with a certain degree of trepidation because the trailers did not do this movie justice. It made it feel very much kind of like like it was going to be a broad comedy. Sorry, kind of belched
had a little sausage repeating on you there.
Yeah,
little bratwurst.
Yeah, no. So do not fall victim to this trailer and think, it's just going to be base comedy. This is a brilliantly dynamic comedy, and why it works so well is because it's not shot like a comedy.
Oh my God. Yet
someone else must have thrown up in the background there. Yeah, no.
Someone was playing with a dog.
This is what Game Night is. Game Night is shot and edited like a thriller. Yeah. But it just happens to be a sharply written comedy.
Yes, I was supremely impressed. Like I was on Reddit, just kind of skimming before I saw the movie, and everybody's like, "Oh, the cinematography, the shot composition, like it's really good." And I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." And then I watched it, and I was like, "Holy shit, this movie is shot well."
Those pull away shot, like one thing that's great is there's these establishing shots that occur throughout the film that bring you to each setting that the film takes place, and they are filmed in such a way that it makes the neighborhood that it's filming look like a board game.
And it's
yeah, they don't use CG or anything. They make them look like models using clever filmmaking.
It looks like a board game. Yeah. Same thing with the tracking shots, like during two of the car sequences, the camera is locked behind the car. Even if it swerves to the left, the camera stays right behind it in a tracking shot, and it looks like a little toy car.
Right, yeah. It's amazing how they do that. And that's just one technical aspect of this film that is...
I liked the shot when they're in the room with Brooks, and the bad guy is reaching through the door and using a pool cue to hit the deadbolt. And every time he hits the deadbolt, the camera, it does a sharp twist in sync with the deadbolt turning.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we've covered the technically impressive aspect, which it is so rare to get a comedy that truly has like visual flair and feels like a director who actually knows how to make a dynamic movie and not just, you know, film comedians doing things. That's the problem I've had for years with like Judd Apatow as a director, because I feel like Judd Apatow films actors and that's how he directs. He just films them doing stuff. He doesn't make the movies feel like anything.
He boasts that he had a mile of film for the 40-year-old version. Like, that's a good thing.
And it's, you know, Stanley Kubrick, I'm sure, had several miles of film for The Shining, but god damn it, he knew what he was doing. Game Night, on the other hand, this movie really just first of all, it's a tight script. The script, the Mark Perez is credited as the script writer here, and this is a movie that, despite the trend in comedies these days of having these lengthy improv sessions, I only felt a couple times in this movie where it seemed like people were bouncing jokes off each other. For the most part, it's just the humor comes from the situations that they get into, and from, you know, the characters' inherent competitiveness. The essential plot of this film is it begins with this wonderful pre-credits and actually during credits sequence that sets up the relationship between Rachel McAdams and Jason Bateman. They basically are two hyper-competitive gamers who meet during a trivia night at a bar and fall in love and eventually become married, because they have this shared obsession with gaming.
And winning.
And winning. Both of them want to win. And they get married because they want to win together.
Did you notice, really quick, did you notice that in the subway there was a sticker that said, "Don't trust Gary"?
Yes. Yeah.
Just making sure.
So it's now Gary, we may as well broach this, is their next door neighbor, Gary Kingsbury. He's a police officer, and he's never invited to game night. He used to be, but he was only invited because they were friends with his wife, and the wife left him, and so now he's left constantly wishing he could be reinvited to game night, but he's the creepy ex-husband that no one wants to talk to.
Meth Damon damn near stole the show in this movie.
Yeah, Jesse Plemons plays the cop. Jesse Plemons, Meth Damon did very much.
If you Google Meth Damon, it actually redirects to Jesse Plemons.
Because he does have a total Matt Damon look to him, but he's and oddly enough, what's interesting is this movie has a joke about looking a hell of a lot like a celebrity, but not being a celebrity.
Yes.
And I have to think that has to have been partially inspired by the fact that Jesse Plemons looks suspiciously like Matt Damon, but just enough not like him to make it kind of weird.
I think it was Screen Junkies that said that they're usually someone would say that Jesse Plemons is discount Matt Damon, but they're almost ready to call Matt Damon discount Jesse Plemons.
Ooh.
I completely agree, because Jesse Plemons has, I mean, he is just, whereas Matt Damon, I would say on a good day is, you know, he's solid in movies that, like, in a good movie where he will deliver a solid performance. He's never been an actor who I would say has blown me away in anything. Jesse Plemons.
Let's just say that there are two actors that look like Matt Damon, and only one of them had a good last couple of movies.
Yeah. Well, that and the fact that everything I've seen Jesse Plemons do in film is just like he has this weird and awesome cadence to the way he delivers a performance that I just love. And in Game Night in particular, his character is literally the creepy next door neighbor, and he steals every scene that he's in, hook, line, and sinker.
And he works so well with the comedic timing of the film, like the editing and directing and his performance, I think, were some of the best parts of the film. Like towards the beginning when he's asking about game night, like, no, we're just gonna have a night in, and then perfectly in time, Jason Bateman's character picks up a shopping bag that has like snacks and like 3 bags of Tostitos chips in it and celery and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, oh, that's a lot of that's 3 bags of Tostitos scoops. And Jason Bateman was like, yeah, they had a 3-for-1 sale at the store. And it's probably my favorite line in the movie. Jesse Plemons' character is like, how can that possibly be profitable for Frito-Lay?
And that comes around. Actually, I think the best to me, the one of the best things about this movie. And by the way, how did you sit through the credits?
I saw the during credit scene. I did not see the post credit scene, but I know what it is.
Okay, yeah. So basically, yeah.
And we should do spoilers too. By the way,
yeah.
Spoiler alerts.
Yeah.
Bill, have you seen this?
No.
Okay.
You know what? Let's not go into any more details about this story.
I know exactly what you're talking about, though, and I thought that was great. I also, this is not a spoiler, but there's one character. It was Ryan, right? The idiot.
Yeah, Billy Magnuson.
There's a shot of his his ID card towards the end of the movie, and it turns out he's a Harvard alumni.
Right.
That was hilarious because this guy is a fucking idiot.
Right, and to give you an idea of how dumb Ryan is, he is so bent on basically, he's a little insulted because they make an insinuation during one of the game nights earlier in the movie that he always brings the stupid floozy, just the sexy floozy to the game night, and it's a different one every time. And so he's so bent on impressing his friends with how he can date smart people that he literally picks up the first person he can find who has like an accent, and he insists he insists he picked her up for her British accent. By the way, she's Irish,
right.
and she happens to be quite good looking, but not overly floozy or anything. And she's a little older, and she figures out very early on that she was brought in literally because she's a ringer.
Right.
And what's great about that is that's set up to point out that this guy is an incredibly surface level kind of douchebag, but they have this wonderful chemistry with each other that insinuates a little bit more than that while he might not have been thinking of her as a girlfriend to pick up, they never fully establish maybe that they're going to eventually be boyfriend and girlfriend, but I think the implication is there.
And aren't they in a later game night towards the end? Aren't they together still?
Yeah, I think they are.
Again, right?
Yeah, they don't insinuate how whether the two of them are actually still together, but they're in that scene. So
yeah, they've shown up together at least as friends. And that was who was that played her?
The Irish woman.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sharon Horgan.
Yes, Sharon Horgan.
Yeah.
Solid performance. I have not seen her in anything as far as I know, and I really liked her performance in this film.
She was in The Increasingly Poor Decisions of Todd Margaret, which I
wait a second. I have seen that. She is in that, and you're right. She's great in that.
Did you see that show to completion, by the way?
I only saw the first season, and I found out later that there was another season, and I was like, oh, well, I guess I have to see that eventually?
You do, because whatever they hint at with things getting more out of control, it reaches a ridiculous fever pitch in the final season. So I definitely recommend, as a side note, watching Todd. It's just called Todd Margaret in the second and third season, but yes, it's a great show, and she is great in it. So anyway, like you were talking about the plot, they do this game night. You just
said third season. I only knew about the second one, so holy shit.
Yeah.
So anyway, you were saying.
So Max has Jason Bateman's character. Max has a very, very competitive brother named Brooks, and this is kind of they find out that Max and Annie cannot have kids because he has been stressed out, and this all stems from his brother coming back into town, and he's always made his life miserable when they were younger. And they have their game night, and at every turn, Brooks undermines Max. At the end of the night, Brooks says, "Hey, next week, let's have it at my house." And when they go there to his house, Brooks says, "Oh, this is going to be a murder mystery. Someone in this room is going to get taken, and the rest of you have to figure out the clues to save us, and then or to save that person." And then Jeremy Wright, in an uncredited role, comes in as an FBI agent and says, "You guys are all in danger. Someone's going to come and kidnap somebody." Somebody does. They punch out Jeffrey Wright's character. Jeremy Wright. Is it Jeremy Wright or Jeffrey Wright?
Jeffrey, thank
you. Punches him out, and then there's this massive fight scene between these two thugs and Brooks's character, which is, again, very well shot and very funny. It did one of my favorite things, editing-wise, that movies do, where like there's this violent, loud fight inside of a building, and then there's a cut outside of the building where you just hear like either nothing or very serene music, where you can clearly see the violence going on in through the window. And then the guys eventually take Brooks away, and it turns out that was not part of the game. That was a real kidnapping, and so the rest of the friends have to figure out how to save Brooks. Although I think for part of the movie, only Max and Annie are aware that it was a real kidnapping, and everybody else is like, "Yeah, this is a part of the game." Right.
The movie for probably for probably about 20 minutes, the movie felt like it was going to go. I don't know if you remember there was this movie in the 90s with Bill Murray, The Man Who Knew Too Little.
Mm-hmm.
And the concept of The Man Who Knew Too Little is Bill Murray is coming to visit his brother. His brother lives in England, and Bill Murray's character is kind of a schlubby manager of a Blockbuster Video, and his brother is this rich and kind of successful businessman.
Mm-hmm.
And to try to get Bill Murray out of the way for a day, he hires a live action kind of mystery company, very much like the setup for this movie, to come in and basically they're going to put him in his own spy movie, and he unwittingly bumbles into a real life spy story, and
yes.
It's actually a very underrated comedy. As far as like PG rated comedies of the 90s, really satisfying. I recommend it because Bill Murray just plays dumb so well. And right. the only Achilles heel of that movie is the fact that his character stays completely ignorant to the fact that it's not real, that it is real through the most ludicrous of situations. And this movie gives that up in about 20 minutes. And I was glad that they didn't go there, because it would have been so hard for to believe that these people would actually still think that they were in a game after some of the shit that happens.
This movie does a really good job of making the events seem kind of plausible in the context of what it set up, but not really plausible in a real life context, which makes there's a tease of a really weird double twist towards the end that I would have totally bought if they had done it.
Oh, I bought it. I bought it when it happened, and then they pulled back, and I was like, oh, okay, well, that works too.
I kind of bought it too, I think. Here's the other thing that somebody pointed out to me that I really love. There are a lot of references to board games that are some subtle and some not so subtle. Like,
oh yeah,
when Kevin and Michelle are stuck in a room, they stack these wooden boxes to get to the roof, kind of like Jenga.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep. When Annie shoots Max in the arm on accident, she has to dig the bullet out, kind of like Operation.
Mm-hmm.
Where there's a crate that almost falls on a character, kind of like Mousetrap. Like there's a lot of just subtle in-world references to board games that I thought was there's a lot of thought put into this movie, way more than your standard quote unquote big budget comedy.
Not bad for the director of Vacation.
Directors
of Vacation. Yeah.
Speaking of the operation scene, that was fucking funny.
Yeah, let's not get into that because there's a total.
Yes,
there's a joke that you could totally spoil.
Yes, there's a lot of joke that could spoil, but I was dying during that scene. This is I knew I would enjoy this movie because I like Jason. I will see anything with Jason Bateman, even The Switch. I knew The Switch was going to be shit, and I saw it anyway because I support Jason Bateman. But I loved it way more than I thought I was going to.
All right, so I fully agree with that, and we're going to go ahead and what we'll do is the Tick we'll discuss next week because Bill Leon really should be here to talk about the Tick.
Yeah.
He's obsessed with it, and
has he finished it?
Oh yeah,
I'm sure he did it all in one sitting, right?
Yes, it's easy to do.
Yeah, I think I'm like 2 episodes behind.
But yeah, so we'll talk about the Tick next week, and you know what? Because Bill Leon was present during Superstar, the Karen Carpenter story, we will talk about that next week too.
Okay.
So in other words, we'll go ahead and bring an ending to this episode. We will have our bonus Oscar night stream. If you know, maybe we might be putting it up to watch, but honestly, if we can grab it with it, I might do that instead because I don't think anyone actually watches, and you know,
except for the one where almost everyone got drunk.
Yeah. All right. Well, so we will see you on Oscar night, maybe, possibly.
All right.
All right.
All right.